Dr. Doherty, thank you so much for coming out this evening to join us. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
So we have about an hour and a half, if we need that long, for our questions. We're going to leave some time at the end for your questions of us. And we thought we'd start out with brief introductions and then letting you share a little bit about yourself, and then we'll jump into our questions.
Great. Thank you.
So I'm Kate Potter. I'm on the Regional School Committee.
Hi, I'm Angie Johnson, and I'm the chair of the Sherborn School Committee.
Hi, I'm Ann Hovey, and I'm on the Regional School Committee.
I'm Lynn Collins, and I'm also on the Regional School Committee.
Hi, I'm Sarah Gutierrez, and I'm on the Dover School Committee.
Hi, I'm Maggie Sharon. I'm the chair of the Regional School Committee, and I met you earlier in the search team.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Liz Grossman, and I'm on the Dover School Committee.
Cheryl Fry, I'm on the Regional School Committee.
Leslie Leon, I am the chair of the Dover School Committee.
Judy Miller, I am the vice chair of the Regional School Committee, and we the staff committee.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Colleen Burt. I'm on the Dover School Committee.
I'm Dennis Quant, I'm on the Sherborn School.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so if you would like to start, that would be great.
Great. Thank you very much, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to meet with you, but also with the different groups of educators today. I had a great site visit, having an opportunity to meet with staff, the student support team, the building administrators, and district administrators. It was great to learn a lot about your school district and the great things that are happening here. They just seem like a very easy group to work with and very dedicated to what they're doing. As you've probably seen from my resume, I have been in the same district for the last 34 years, but I've had different roles. I started as a middle school science teacher and then moved to building principal of the same middle school, and then went to central office about 10 years later, where I was the assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction, and then 12 years ago became the superintendent. Throughout my entire career, my focus has always been to do what's best for kids and engage those students and challenge them in ways that would get them excited about learning. And that the decisions that we've always made as a district and a leadership team, and the decisions I've made as superintendent have always focused on those areas, is to do what's best for kids. Some of the things I'm very proud of in what we've done is we've been able to do a lot of work in social emotional learning, both in our district, but also I am a member of the DSSA Safe and Supportive Schools Commission, which I'm the co-chair, and that's statewide work on how we can create safe and supportive schools for all students throughout the Commonwealth. We've also started doing some work in equity and social justice. The last 2 to 3 years, that has been in our district improvement plan. It's an area that we're very passionate about, and that work is obviously going to continue. I'm also proud of the fact that we've done a lot of work in special education, particularly trying to keep students in district. When I first came in, we had 1 special education in-district program, and now we're up to 9. And that really keeps kids with their peers, and obviously that's the right thing. That's the right thing to do. And I'm also proud of the fact that I've been able to mentor and coach many administrators throughout the years to move on to other higher level administrative positions, whether it be central office or director levels, or having teachers become principals in the district. So I find that I've been able to do that over the years as well. In my role, if I were to be the interim, I would look to support the work that is going on, and I know that there is some good work going on with an upcoming equity audit this fall, some work in curriculum and instruction that's going on. you have a veteran group of administrators that I would provide support and coach, and really continue the district going in the right direction, and then also prepare for a transition for the next superintendent. I'm currently doing that in my district, where I'm working with the superintendent-elect as he's transitioning in for next year. So I find that those are areas that I can contribute to the Dover-Sherborn School District and community.
Thank you. Leslie?
Hi, I just also, my name is Leslie Leon, to remind you, and I just wanted to let you know that I'll give you like a little reminder if you're close to. We're going to try to keep all the answers around 5 minutes.
Okay.
Just so we have time for you at the end to ask us any questions.
Sure.
So our first question for you is, could you please describe how you have worked with your current team to educate children during the pandemic? How would you envision helping our community, students, teachers, and families heal and move forward next year?
So when you mean team, you're talking about the district leadership team and other administrators, or everybody? Staff?
I would say everybody.
Everybody,
yeah.
Okay. So obviously this has been challenging for everybody this year, and the work began well over a year ago when on March 13th we basically shut down and we didn't know how long it was going to be. When we realized that school was not going to continue in the way we knew it last spring, we began working on a plan for the reentry. And we set up several committees of staff of different sectors. So we had a health sector, we had a facility sector, we had a teaching and learning sector, and we had a social emotional sector. And staff, we had teachers, administrators that were part of each of those groups. We had parents as part of those groups. And the whole purpose of it was to identify what we needed to do, what the plan was going to look like. And through that emerged, a plan started gelling. And we knew that at some point we were going to have to create 3 plans, a totally remote plan, a hybrid plan, and a full in-person plan. In order to do that, we got a lot of feedback. We sent out several surveys. I held community and staff virtual forums where at key points during the process, I brought people together and answered all of their questions as much as I possibly could, being as transparent as possible, taking their feedback in, going back to the drawing board if things didn't seem right, and coming back with new plans. So when we were ready to open in the fall, although not everyone agreed with the model that we chose, they understood the reasons why we chose the model that we did, which was a hybrid model of a week on, week off model for health and safety. We went with the week on, week off instead of a 2-1-2 model each week. We felt that that was better for health and safety. Throughout the year, we had periodic check-ins in virtual forums, again with staff and community members when there were key transition points. I would send weekly emails updating the community and the staff on items that were of importance, and sometimes it was more than once a week. And then with the leadership team, we met weekly to troubleshoot and identify any situations we needed to resolve. I also met with the central office leadership team 3 times a week in the morning to make sure that we were covering our bases on all different areas. So I met with the CFO, the Assistant Superintendent for Student Services, the Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, and the HR Director, and we all worked together so that we all understood what the work that each of us was doing. Moving forward, I think that the transition this fall is going to be difficult. I am so glad that we made the transition this spring and not next fall, because for the social emotional piece for our students and staff, it was the right thing to do. And going into the fall, we are going to have to take a look at how are we going to, especially the students that have stayed remote this whole time and chose not to come back this spring, how are we going to transition them back? How are we going to handle the areas where students are going to start getting their vaccines, because we're going to have students coming in that will have not been vaccinated yet. Are we still going to be doing certain health precautions? There's a lot of different questions that are going to need to be asked, and that'll be part of the planning this summer that will happen in working with all the stakeholders to both communicate and to plan that. So I also see that the social emotional piece in the fall will be priority 1, and then priority 2 is closing that learning gap. How do we make up all of the learning that may have been lost during the time? And that's going to take a little bit of time to do, but once students are ready to learn, then we can take on the second piece to that and provide the supports necessary.
Thank you.
They want us in front of the microphone.
They want.
Oh. Sorry, it's a little tangent. So are there any challenges that are unique to the role of being an interim superintendent? And how would you plan to address these challenges if you're chosen for this role at DS?
Great question. For me personally, the biggest challenge will be I've never been part of a regional school district before, which I think that's going to just, take a lot of learning and getting up to speed with any rules, laws, regulations that may be different between a regional school district and a single school district. So that I see as one challenge. In terms of just being an interim in general, I think there certainly can be challenges, but I think there's also opportunities in working with staff to give them the flexibility necessary to carry out the plans that they need to carry out. Your district improvement plan, the equity audit, which I know is going to be in place for next fall, the follow-up from the equity audit, educating the community, both before, during, and after that audit, I think is something that is going to be a challenge as an interim. Getting to know the staff in a very short period of time, I would consider a challenge as an interim. To address that, I would be doing an entry plan, probably not as extensive as I would if I was going to be in the permanent role, but I still feel that as an interim, I need to know the stakeholders, I need to be able to be visible, I need to connect with staff as much as possible in the community. So I would see those as the big challenges. And then the final piece is building trust and relationship with community members and the staff as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
Judy?
May I just ask, are people hearing me in the back? Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
How do you describe your communication style? And how do you envision establishing clear lines of communication to the community? What type and frequency of communication have you found to be most successful?
My communication style is open, honest, and transparent. And that has been particularly tested during the pandemic when there's a lot of questions and sometimes we don't have answers. So we give as much information as we can and speculate on what we're looking at and what could happen. My communication style over the last several years has been frequent. I use a variety of modes. I have a blog, which is connected to social media, which once I put a blog post, it goes to Twitter, it goes to Facebook, our Facebook pages, and our Twitter account. And so it's broadcast that way. I send out a weekly bulleted email. I have pre-pandemic, I had a newsletter that I would send out weekly. The challenge was that people just didn't have the time to read it, and they just wanted the information in as concise fashion as possible. So that's why I went to the email with the bulleted information. I also welcome the opportunities to have forums, and during the pandemic it was virtual. And the key points I had those forums and answered questions. I was not afraid to get the difficult questions and answer them to the best of my ability. And then another mode of communication I have found is school committee meetings and the ability to do updates at the school committee meetings and get questions from community members during the school committee meetings. I put together presentations that would give updates on all the areas that we're working on and things that we're looking ahead to. And then the last piece is being visible at events. I consider also a method of communication, and having those informal conversations with community members, teachers, staff, administrators. I find that to be valuable as well. So those would be my different methods and modes of communication that I'd be using.
Thank you.
Thank you. As an interim superintendent in an extremely engaged community, how do you balance the need to lead while coaching and mentoring those around you to foster the next generation of leadership?
It's a great question. I think, first of all, there's a very it's a veteran group of administrators who obviously have the relationships and the trust level already built with their staff and their community members. So I'm going to be learning from them as much as they're going to probably be. In fact, I'm going to be learning more from them than they're probably going to learn from me, because they have that institutional knowledge that I don't have. So the way I would look at it is, I would focus on the areas which would help support them. So it could be dealing with a difficult issue, so that they can focus on, running their buildings and moving their school improvement plans forward. So I would see that. If I would welcome them to call me in for a difficult situation, whether it be a difficult conversation with a staff member or a difficult conversation with a parent, or a case where they may need to consult with public safety or something like that. So that's how I would approach it. And I think, as I said earlier, the other thing is I'll learn a lot of this during the entry plan process as to what are the key areas that they need support in and what areas do they want to have more autonomy. So it's going to be that loose tight for a while until we can figure that out.
Thank you.
How have your leadership and communication styles enabled you to gain consensus and tackle unpopular issues with the myriad stakeholders with whom you interact? And can you please provide an example of bringing a community to consensus around a controversial matter?
Thank you. The example that was relevant at the beginning of the pandemic was what was the hybrid model that we were going to use. So leading up to the summer, I did a lot of research on what was going on in other countries and nationally for schools that had already started going back to school in different models. And what I discovered is that there was not one solution, that there was many different types. So my focus was more on, okay, so what would make the most sense from a health safety standpoint, but at the same time maintaining the educational quality that we wanted in both an in-person and in a remote setting. So through a lot of conversations, I proposed a week-on, week-off model. But I also gave as an alternative to hear feedback on the model where you would go 2 days on, 1 day remote for everybody, and then 2 days you would be remote, and it would go back and forth. And At first, the week-on, week-off model met with a lot of resistance. But as time went on and people understood the health and safety reasons for doing that, and that the educational piece, when students were fully remote, the teacher was with them, remote. When students were fully in person, the teacher was in person with them. Staff liked that idea because they didn't want to have to do the live streaming piece. The health and safety piece, our nurses loved the idea because if someone did test positive, they could still be remote and learn remotely during the time that everyone else was remote. So the kids were not necessarily singled out. So over time, communicating that through the forums that I mentioned earlier, the emails, the meetings I had with my leadership team, the meetings I had with health and safety. We also brought in the town. So we had a very unique structure in our community where we had what was called Incident Command. It's built on the ICS model. And every Monday, starting last March, a year ago, the police chief, the fire chief, the town manager, myself, the CFO, Board of Health, all met. And we discussed all kinds of issues related to the community. The school was a major partner in that because we had the resources, particularly space, where we could offer things to the community in working together with the town. So that provided another avenue to get feedback and input. So for example, we did mass distribution last spring. We worked together as an incident command to offer a community mask distribution. We did the same thing early on with vaccinations. So we were communicating at all levels. We were communicating with staff, we were communicating with the community, and we were communicating with town officials. And that model proved to be very beneficial as we went through this pandemic. So that was a difficult situation that at first people were not on board, and then as time went on and more understanding and knowledge came about, they understood it.
Thank you.
So this is a question about educating the whole child. As a district that places a high priority on academic achievement, how would you align parents to the importance of educating the whole child?
Yes, very challenging question. Dover-Sherborn clearly is a high-performing school district, as evidenced by college acceptances, academic results. And I think that what's important in all that is we need to measure both informally and formally, at the social emotional impact that has on our students. So there are various ways to do that. You take a look at, you could do student climate surveys. You could do the youth risk behavior survey. Those types of check-ins give you a snapshot of some of the areas that our children may be struggling in. I think that data piece is important because we need to educate both ourselves and the community at what the struggles our students are going through. So you've got the academic piece, which is extremely, extremely solid. And then we also have to take a look at what is the social emotional supports that we need to put in place. So we want to encourage students to go beyond that. We want to encourage students to be involved in extracurricular and the arts and athletics, and I know that's been challenging this year in the pandemic, but still that gives that balance. Clubs and activities that students may be interested in. Some of the types of assessments that we want to use, our project-based assessments that would be beneficial and would be connecting to real-world situations. One example is in lieu of your midterm or final exams, do a real-world problem-solving exercise where students have to work in groups for 4 days on a particular problem that's related to the community or the world or the region, and then they have to present the findings of their solution to the problem to the community. Those are all ways that you can create more of a balanced approach, still keeping the standardized piece of test scores and the college acceptances piece, which are critical, but to give them more balance. And also give them avenues to hear student voice, whether it be through small group advisory, whether it be through affinity groups, giving students an opportunity to express their voice also helps contribute to that whole child balance. And for those students that may be struggling, having the supports there to provide them the counseling supports, the guidance, the ability to go to an adult, a trusted adult in their school or their classroom that can provide them that support if they're at risk. So those are some of the thoughts I had on how you would create a more balanced whole child approach.
Thank you.
So you were just talking, oh, sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
You were just talking big picture. I would love to know, can you share an instance, so small details, about a time you were faced with competing priorities of maintaining high academic rigor and meeting each child's learning needs?
So you're talking more of a specific situation?
Scenario.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think it's what we're dealing with right now with MCAS. I think is a perfect example. And I know that there are some federal and state reasons why we're doing MCAS right now. But I'm not sure that the data is going to give us, the data is going to tell any of the story that we want to know. I mean, our students have just come back over the last month, 2 months, and this fall, this spring should be really focused on rebuilding those relationships, and yes, definitely doing academics, but spending as much classroom time as possible interacting without Zoom, interacting in person, and not taking standardized tests. And there were opportunities in the federal waiver process where those tests could have been administered in the fall and could have been used as a key diagnostic to help support students in real time when they arrive back in the fall. And I think we lost an opportunity there to, instead of focusing on the social emotional piece with some academics, now I think we lost an opportunity that we're going to be spending some time doing MCAS testing, and I know that it's going to be a challenge for staff, it's going to be a challenge for students. Remote students that have to take the MCAS is a whole nother set of challenges because they have to take it at home under parent supervision. So I think that's an example of a struggle that is the current MCAS situation.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
So this is related to student achievement, sort of outside of the academic concept specifically. Describe how your view of student achievement extends beyond academic growth, and please give concrete examples of programs and priorities you believe would be beneficial to the DS community.
So I would describe academic achievement in a lot of different ways beyond grades and standardized test scores. One certain way is community service. I think community service is a powerful tool for our students. It builds skills, those 21st century skills that you can't necessarily learn in a classroom. I think project-based learning, and some things that come to mind are the different activities such as robotics team or a science Olympiad team, or performances in the arts. Those to me are examples of student achievement. That's where some kids shine, are in those types of areas. I think also we've got some students that do very, very well remotely, and we've seen that. It's not a large population of kids, but there are some students that do much better remotely than they do in person. And so I think that that's a form of achievement in how they've flourished this year. I think we've seen that firsthand. So I think those are some of the examples. I'm trying to see what else we could see. You know, just also simple things as how to create empathy and paying forward. And it's a concept that I've always believed in, is doing something for others, you know, paying it forward. And I think that's tied into the community service piece, and how also we can connect to community activities. What role can our students play with the community? What role do they have with, say, bringing a, I'll give an example. So we're in the middle of town meeting, and we have a group of 8th grade students who are proposing an instructional motion at town meeting to beautify a park area. So I think those are examples of student achievement. I think having students be able to articulate concerns in a respectful way is another example. I think discussions about current events, and certainly there are a lot of different situations that we've seen over the last several months, which could relate to healthy dialogue in a classroom where you've got a debate of pros and cons of a certain topic, where the teacher is the facilitator of that conversation. So I think those are ways that I would envision student achievement to occur.
Good evening. How do you define anti-racism, and what role, if any, do you believe it should play in public education?
I think it's a critical part of public education. I would define an anti-racist curriculum, an anti-racist school is a school where students and staff are providing equitable opportunities for learning, that all students have access to those opportunities, regardless of their race or disability or gender. I think that's what I would define, is giving them the equitable opportunities to do that. I think that is something that is going to take time. It's a cultural discussion that needs to happen. It starts with staff being aware of it first, and realizing that there's not going to be easy answers to it, that they're going to walk away from conversations feeling uncomfortable, and that's okay. In terms of what is our curriculum going to look like, what are our practices going to look like, those are going to be difficult conversations that are going to need to be had. Those are conversations that need to also be had at the district level and with our administrators, because they have to model the behavior. So they have to be a part of the training, the professional development, those conversations that are happening. Some ways to do that is through book groups, where staff and administrators are engaged in that conversation together, as to what an anti-racist school would look like. It's also taking a look at your handbook, your student handbooks, and making them more equitable, changing the language. It's taking a look at the policies at the school committee level and making sure that they're equitable, and working with administrators and the superintendent and the assistant superintendent in those areas. So I think the equity audit that the district is going to be doing in the fall is a critical first step. Educating the community about the necessity for an equity audit, which my assumption is that's already started happening. During the equity audit is going to be a lot of work, and whoever is going to run the equity audit they're going to be looking at a lot of our practices that are going to be happening, and then afterwards taking the information from the equity audit and using that information to create the schools that will practice these behaviors. So again, it's going to take time. It's something that needs to be prioritized in the district improvement plan and the school improvement plans for it to be successful. And it's not going to be an easy solution or conversation. It's going to take some time.
Thank you.
Can you please give us an example of a tough situation that arose in your school district around racism and equity? How did you resolve this with your staff, students, and community?
We have had, over the last several years, we have had several graffiti incidents in our schools. And they've been ranging from SWAT stickers to hurtful, hateful graffiti for our students of color. And unfortunately, they've even happened most recently. We had a span of time where we did not have any, and obviously that we felt that the things that we were putting in place were starting to work, but then recently we've had a couple of more. So the way we've handled it is to be as transparent as possible. So I'll use the graffiti in the bathrooms, and again, it could be a SWAT sticker, or it could be a very hateful comment towards people of color. And once it's discovered, we've created a whole protocol on how to address this. So it starts first, obviously, with notifying the right individuals, and then creating communication for staff, creating communication for the district, and creating communication for the community. And explaining the situation, explaining how it happened, but then saying that this is not appropriate behavior for our community, but also then to talk about, here are the things that we are doing and need to continue to do. So that's an example of how we have had those and how we've addressed them. Unfortunately, we've had many. We involve law enforcement in that. If there is a situation where we have identified the person that created the graffiti, we want to make that a learning opportunity for that student or person as well. So we want to look at a combination of restorative practices and other consequences, because we don't want the same behavior to keep happening. And we need to identify why did that student do that? Are they crying for help? And how can we address that if they're crying for help? So those are all the things that would be going through our mind as we do that. When we first had our SWAT sticker, I'm going to digress just for a second. Our first SWAT sticker in 2018, we brought in the Jewish community, and we had a long conversation with members of the Jewish community. And we listened to them and how hurt they were, and what can we do moving forward to make them feel more safe in our community. So we would do the same with other groups that may have been hurt by the hateful language. So those are the types of steps that we've taken in the past and how we've addressed it.
So this is kind of a follow-on to the question you just answered,
Okay.
and sort of the flip side. Because as you might imagine, everyone is not, there are many different opinions on these issues. And so this question is, can you give an example of a time when you had to address community concerns about the measures you took to address inequities and opportunity gaps in education?
Yes. We've been told sometimes that we're too transparent in our communication, that by communicating it creates a copycat effect. And it's just, the flip side is we've heard that this is just a kid being a kid. So we go back to what these symbols or these graffiti mean and go through the history of them. And educate the community that way. We're fortunate that our community does embrace this, that there's always going to be a vocal group. But for the most part, we've been able to educate the community in a way through both our youth groups, through town organizations, to talk about these things in a respectful and safe manner. And again, not everyone is going to be satisfied. Not everyone is going to be happy. We've had challenging conversations about repurposing our bathrooms for transgender students. We've had difficult conversations about the use of the locker rooms for transgender students. And so in each case, we go back to what's best for the student, what's best for that child. And so when we do that, I feel that that's the evidence, that's the piece, and that's the education. It's never going to be complete because there's always going to be that point of view, and we just need to continue to educate people in different ways through conversations, through meetings, and make the conversations as respectful as possible, without getting animated or anything like that, because the bottom line is it comes back to the student and how that student feels for that situation.
How would you contribute to our district's commitment to enhance diversity, equity, and inclusion at Dover-Sherborn?
It's a great question. I think it's first making the commitment as a school district, and in your mission, your vision, your values, the work that you're doing in your district improvement plan, communicating that this is a priority. I think looking at the results of the equity audit is going to be critical. Communicating both before, during, and after the equity audit, the why and the purpose for the equity audit, and then taking the information and creating action steps to the goals of what needs to change is going to be critical. I would see myself in the role of being that facilitator and working with administrators, working with the community, and developing those goals and action steps for a multi-year plan to move things forward. I think the hiring practices is another thing you look at. I know in the district I'm in right now, unfortunately, we're predominantly white staff. And that is not representative of our student population. And what are the things that we can do to recruit and retain a more diverse staff? So I think that is something that I can certainly help support, Dover-Sherborn in.
Thank you so much. We have some time now for you to ask questions of us.
Okay.
And if there's anything you feel we might have missed that you want to let us know, this would be a great time.
Great. So I've asked this question today a couple of times. I would love to know what you're most proud of.
Anyone want to take this?
I'm really proud of how well we've educated our kids during the pandemic. I think we had a really tough summer last summer that sort of tore us apart a bit as a community. I think that we came to a really excellent education plan for our school. Thank you to our assistant superintendent. And I'm really proud that we've been able to have these, difficulties and differences and get through it and educate our kids. And I was talking to someone today who told me, I can't even remember, maybe this was at the meeting last night, that it was at our meeting last night, that said our kids are probably at about 80% of what they would have learned had this been a regular year. I'm really proud of that because this was really a tough challenge, and I'm really happy with where we are.
I'll piggyback off that. I'm really proud of our teachers. We actually have a problem in that they come and they stay. So there's very little turnover. At one point, I know at Pine Hill, the most junior teacher had been there for like 8 years. And we're so lucky. They're amazing in so many ways. And they take on so much without even being asked, just because they're so passionate about what they do.
I'm really proud of our students. Also, just to piggyback on the comments that everyone has made, I think, when we were looking at reopening school in the summer and we knew that masks would be part of it, we thought, how in the world are kindergartners going to wear masks throughout the entire school day? And lo and behold, it's really been a non-issue. And so the resiliency of kids that's been on display is something that I think that we should all be proud of. And the way that, I'm a parent of an elementary student, and the way that the children really build a community of kindness and the emphasis that they have on treating each other well and with respect is something that I think we should all be proud of.
I'm really proud of the work that the district has done. The DSSA, I'm not sure if you are aware of the work that we're doing in
The website's amazing.
Yeah,
amazing.
It's been, a ton of work for people involved this year, and the district has taken it on, this group has taken it on in an unflinching way. We're taking it very seriously, as you can tell by our questions. But I've been really proud of the courage of our leaders to take this on in a serious way. I hope that can continue.
And just to that point, if I am in this role, I see that as a big part of my job, is to support the great work that's already been happening. If there are challenges, it's my job to work with others to solve it. But I don't see my role as to come in to fix things, because this school district is very strong, the staff is strong, the administrators are strong. I had some great conversations today. Clearly they're dedicated to their work. I see my job more as a coach, a mentor, someone that can troubleshoot for them if they need me to, and I will certainly do that. I also see myself as someone, you're going to get someone that's going to work very hard, dedicated to the job, just like I have for the last 34 years in the district I'm currently in. So I also bring a world of experiences at the state level and the regional level as well that I believe can help the school district with some of the networking and resources for some of the projects that are being worked on. So I do see some of those pieces that I can contribute to Dover-Sherborn.
Great.
I'm going to add one more thing I'm proud of.
Okay, great.
Besides all these things, which are all the things, like I'm also proud of our two communities that are our taxpayers that support us, because I think within the locals, which is the elementary schools, but also within the region, when a town votes to send their money over to the region, they really are making a little bit of a leap of faith, because then they send it to us and it's up to the region to manage it. And that they've been committed to doing that consistently over a long period of time, which is partly why we were able to open up our schools to all our students earlier than maybe we would have otherwise, because class sizes have remained strong. We did not have to make millions of dollars of infrastructure improvements. Our HVAC systems were already there. And that takes a long time commitment from both communities, even when those choices are hard. We're small towns, we don't get a lot of state aid, and everyone's budget's tight. So I really respect and have a lot of gratefulness for both our communities that pay the taxes and keep the lights on. So.
Okay. Anybody else?
That was my one question.
Okay. Well, fabulous. Thank you again for your time. And it's been a long day, I know, but we loved having you come out and seeing people in person.
Yeah,
so wonderful.
That piece was great.
Oh, yeah. And so our process going forward is that we're meeting Monday night to deliberate in public session, and then we'll be in touch.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much.